Well, hello, I'm here today with Bruce Cadle from the Fresh Start Church in Melbourne, Florida. How are you doing today, Bruce?
Good, Jeff. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you here.
Yeah, absolutely. It is my great pleasure. And we got introduced to each other just about a year ago, and you reached out to me in Church Plant Solutions just as you were getting ready to launch the the Fresh Start Church, the Fresh Start Church, and you just celebrated your year anniversary. Is
We
that
did. Yeah, last Sunday was our first anniversary of our first worship celebration.
Yeah, that is so exciting, Bruce. Congratulations on that. So there are a few things I think about your story that are just amazing and inspirational to me. And I think that needs to be told for other people. And, one thing is, you are not, I would say the typical church planter. You're not the young hipster. I don't know, I can't see, but I hope you're not wearing skinny jeans. Um, but so tell us a little bit about your call to church planting.
So let me respond to that first. I went to a church planters workshop recently, and I told my son, I was on my way there, and I said, I'm going to be the only guy without a black cap and tattoos there. And sure enough, I walked in, everybody's got tattoos, beards, and black caps on. But I love church planters. I love church planting. I have said for years, because I've planted before, I've transitioned declining churches before, and for years I've said church planting is the extreme sport of ministry. It's a young man's game. But God began to place just a little less than 2 years ago, place on my heart a desire to plant another church. And I argued with him. I told him it didn't make sense, but he seemed to know more than I did. And so he just began to just increasingly build my heart, give me a desire to start a new work here.
Wow. Yeah. In my experience, arguing with God doesn't go too well. So, but I feel like certainly that's similar to my call to church planting anyway, was kind of kicking and screaming, like, God send somebody else. It wasn't here I am, send me. It was God, there's somebody else, send them. But I'm glad you answered the call. And so can I ask, how old are you, Bruce?
I am 105. I think I look pretty good for my age.
You do. You look great.
Yeah, I'm 64, turned 64 in March. So I was 63 when we started.
Wow. So at 63, you answered the call to plant the church. And, when you did so, there's a little something going on here in the world that we affectionately refer to as the Rona, I guess, the coronavirus, COVID-19. You planted right in the middle of that, or right at the height of COVID, when things were really, especially here in Florida, where we both are, things were crazy last summer. So tell us a little bit about that.
They were crazy. We actually, the first Sunday in January of 2020, I had just finished a position. It ended the end of December at another church. And my wife and I went to visit a friend of mine's church, and we went out to lunch with him afterwards and just told him we're praying about starting a church. And he said, man, you should do it. If you do it, we'll support you. And sure enough, they gave us most of our sound equipment to help us get started. They support us financially every month. But from that point, Valerie and I were just in agreement. We've been married 46 years. So we've learned to pray.
Congratulations.
Thank you. To pray and not do anything until we've both heard from God and we're in agreement. And so we just felt together we're supposed to go ahead and do this. We started the next week. I was preaching at another friend's church, and some people that were kind of interested in maybe helping us launch a church, they came there. There was 9 people that came, drove about 30 minutes away. And The very next week, we started meeting for prayer just at my house, and then Bible study. Then we moved to a little bigger room for Bible studies on Sunday mornings. And then that room got shut down because of COVID. So we'd had just the seeds. We were just kind of building the launch team and laying down some core values before COVID hit. And then all of a sudden, we couldn't even rent this little meeting room that we were using.
Wow.
So we went online before we were ever in person, really, as far as messages. And just,
but that didn't stop you from officially launching the church last July.
No, actually June.
Yes, because we're in June.
this last Sunday. Yeah, wait for July, but it's gonna be your first July in Florida. You'll know the difference. Yeah, we were just waiting for a place to meet. I started streaming sermons on Sunday mornings and using Zoom for our Connect groups until we could find a place that would let us meet. And so we launched. We had 46 people our first Sunday.
Nice.
Met in a cafe. It's owned by a nonprofit. And they shut down because of COVID and let us move all the tables out of their main dining room and set up just chairs. We set up a projection screens on both sides with rear projection. The band set up lighting, and they let us just leave everything there because they weren't using it. So it was a brand new building. Their cafe had been open like 3 weeks before COVID. So it was multi-million-dollar beautiful new building that we got to baptize for them.
Wow. And so you launched last June, a year ago, the Fresh Start Church. And since then, it's just been all roses, right? Just been a smooth sailing.
Absolutely. Because we found you to handle our finances. Right. No problems.
Yes, exactly.
No, we've had, I think, all the same kind of struggles that all my pastor friends have had in their churches. We've had people that were with us during the Bible study time that have still not attended since COVID. Some of them have, significant health issues. And so they weren't even there for our launch. Hopefully they'll return soon. There's probably 10 to 15 of them. I know they're not going anywhere else, and they would still call us their church, but we'll see if they come back and get plugged in. And so it was kind of frustrating for a while trying to meet their needs still, while wishing they would just come join the rest of us. We finally were allowed to meet in the place that in November that we'd originally hoped to meet, and they had it shut down, and so they let us move over there. So it was a little bit bigger and had a built-in stage and projection and a lot of. They let us set up on their stage as well and leave all our sound equipment, band equipment there every week. So that's been a blessing.
Mm-hmm. So God's been doing some amazing stuff, even in the midst of launching in COVID. But on the personal front, it's been a really trying year, hasn't it?
It has. It's been probably the toughest year. And I mean, we've lived as missionaries. I first started in ministry, in pro-life ministry. So I've spent lots of time in jail for peaceful protest activities. But this past year has been the hardest year of our lives for my wife and I. And she had Lyme disease before we launched. And we knew that. And that was kind of her biggest reservation because, we've always been the first ones to arrive and the last ones to leave. And she's just hands-on, full speed ahead with anything that needs done. And there's days where she just has to lay on the couch all day. It has no energy at all. And finally she said, well, I know God's calling us to do this. It's just not going to look like it has in the past. I'm just not going to be able to, do the things that I'm used to doing. And so we just went ahead and launched, but literally we started those Bible studies in January. In February, she got another infectious disease from a different tick bite.
Oh my.
Her her infectious disease doctor calls her a tick magnet, and it is so rare. Not a doctor in our county, and we've got like 600,000 people. I live on the Space Coast of Florida, so lots of high tech industry over here, and of course the Space Center. Not a single doctor in our county had heard of this disease, ever treated it, and so they were trying to treat her symptoms. She started itching, had rashes all over her body, and was taking 4 meds a day for that. It just didn't help until we found an infectious disease doctor in Gainesville who tested her and knew what to look for, and immediately diagnosed her with alpha-gal, which I think sounds like a superhero. So she started struggling with that. And one of her skin issues, she had all kinds of skin problems, but one was on her lip, and we just assumed that was related to alpha-gal, but actually she had skin cancer. So in
Oh my goodness.
January of this year, she had a 1-inch tumor removed from her lip, and a week later, I was diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer, and so I'm on chemo and waiting for surgery, hopefully to come up here in July or August. Then I tore my meniscus.
Oh my goodness.
So yesterday I got cleared by a cardiologist for 2 surgeries, to get my meniscus repaired and then to get prostate surgery. So yeah, I've literally been to more doctors, had more tests, more MRIs, CAT scans, you name it, done, just in 2021 than in my entire life. So it's been a wild ride, but our new church family that God's been forming is just there right by our sides. They've been generous. They took up special offerings for us the end of last year, and then was able to provide health insurance starting in January. And we met our deductible by March, and within about another week, we will have met our maximum out of pocket for the whole year. So
wow.
What a blessing, because we hadn't had insurance for many, many years.
Yeah. And what an amazing blessing for a church plant that just turned a year old to be able to provide that to you as well. That's huge at this stage of the game. Now, there's probably a lot of church planters out there going, how do I sign up for that? But I know they wouldn't sign up for what you've had to go through, for sure.
Well, yeah, God has, from the beginning, people have just been incredibly generous. I mean, when we were just having Bible study here in our living room, we put some name tags on our dining room table and put a basket next to it if anybody wanted to donate. And Valerie and I took our tithe and opened a bank account. And just from the beginning, people started giving and giving big. And I will never forget Ed Young Jr. from Fellowship Church in Dallas used to come to Florida a lot and do pastors' conferences. And at one of them, he said something that just has always stuck with me. He said, churches don't have money problems, they have vision problems. Where there's vision, people will support it, not just with money, but they will support it. Right. And I thought, wow, that's been so true. And so I try to cast vision for who we want to reach and the kind of church we want to be. And thanks to God, that's happening slower than I'd like, but it's happening. And so I'm just amazed by the generosity of our people. And a few of them have really good jobs, but a number of them are retired, and yet they're some of our biggest givers. And so I'm incredibly thankful for that.
I'm so glad that God has surrounded you with such a generous and loving church family.
Thank you.
And tell us a little bit about that vision. What is the vision of the Fresh Start Church, and how have you seen that play out this first year?
So our mission from the beginning, our mission statement is to help people find and follow Jesus. I've been part of churches that were really good at helping people find Jesus and then kind of left them standing there. And I've been part of some great teaching churches that were all about following Jesus, all about heady theology and really giving people lots of biblical knowledge, but nobody was ever coming to Christ. And so our vision is to see both, to reach people that don't know Jesus and to help them become committed followers of Jesus. And it's interesting, this section of Florida that we're in here on the East Coast, from Daytona Beach to our north, here to Melbourne, where I am, and inland to Orlando, this triangle, we're in the top 10 nationwide for unchurched people and for de-churched people.
Wow.
And that blew my mind, honestly.
Yeah.
There's a
surprising to me.
You just drive through Orlando, there's a million churches, and here, we've got hundreds of churches here in our county. But that really resonated with me because while my primary desire is to see lost people saved, we've been reaching a number of people that were committed Christians. They were leaders in churches and were hurt at some point in the past and had just dropped out of church. And God has just brought them to us. And literally, they walk in the door and say they feel like they found their home. And those people have become our most faithful. They're there to serve. And some of them are old and in terrible health, and they are there and they are serving and they are giving and they are praying, especially for all the things that Valerie and I have gone through. It's just been such a blessing to see people return home and to find, regardless of how they've been hurt by churches in the past, to find a place that's loving and hopefully extending lots and lots of grace.
Yeah. So people are coming there and they are finding a fresh start, maybe after years away from the church, and finding a home with you. That's so good, so great. And your story, I think, it just reminds me, and I think reinforces so much how when Jesus calls us to follow him, and it just has always struck me that Jesus says, pick up your cross and follow me. And he doesn't say, hey, here's where we're going, follow me to X or Y or Z, or here's how long it's going to take, or here's what it's going to look like. It's just, no, follow me, come, let's go. And I think, for me anyway, I usually have a totally different idea in my mind as to what that looks like than what it actually looks like. And I think your story is exemplifies that as well. What if Jesus had said, okay, Bruce, I want you to pick up your cross and follow me at 63 years old, start something new in the midst of a worldwide pandemic, and here, just for good measure, I'm going to throw all kinds of health issues at you and your wife, and here you go. What would you do?
That exact scenario has played out so many times in our lives, where if we knew what was ahead, we never would have done it. But when we look back, we see God's perfect plan to go from here to there, to there, to there, to there, to there, to there. I mean, I became a pastor. I'd already been in ministry for years, and we moved to Central America as missionaries. And the purpose for which we went there just wasn't happening. Nothing was working. And one day Valerie prayed and said, God, I think if we're going to get anything done here, you're going to have to bring some people to our door. And we lived in Belize, Central America, out in the rainforest, in what had been a bar, and a man had been murdered there. So none of the Belizeans would go in the building, but we rented it as a house. And it was way up a driveway. You would never have found us if you were trying. And the day that she prayed that prayer, 3 carloads of Taiwanese people pulled up at our house and came in and talked to us. And long story short, within about a month, we had moved into the capital and we're teaching English as a second language 6 days a week to Taiwanese people. My 40th birthday, there were 40 Taiwanese people there, and just developed such a heart for their people that I said, I've got to go to seminary. I've got to come back here to the States and be equipped to preach. And I honestly thought even then we were going to go, to Asia. But instead, the first church I worked in here in my hometown was a Korean church leading their English service. So they had a Korean pastor and a Korean service, and I was in charge of the English folks. And so we had our own, everything from Sunday school to worship service to youth and everything in English. But looking back, if God said, I'm sending you to Central America so that you can minister to Asian people, I would have said, no way, it doesn't make any sense. So over and over and over, we've seen that happen. And it helps me when I look forward and think, what in the world is going on? If I look back, I say, man, God has always been there. He's always provided. It has rarely ever made sense. But I look back and I see his faithfulness and the amazing things that he's done. And so that gives us faith to step into the future and just say yes to whatever he calls us to do.
Yeah, that's such a good word, Bruce, and something that you have lived out with your life. And in order to follow God forward, we have to look back at his past faithfulness, to trust him for his future faithfulness, really. And it's such a powerful testament to you actually doing that. And so I just thank you for following Jesus and doing it faithfully and not letting, I'm sure there's been discouraging days. There's been days that you've wondered, like, God, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And, I know that's not been easy, but you've been faithful. And I thank you for that, because it's been an inspiration and encouragement to me. And I know it will be to others as well.
I tell people all the time, life is really hard with Jesus. I can't imagine a minute without him. Like, I just can't imagine how anybody makes it without Jesus.
Yeah.
And so it's all him. And as scary as the ride is, sometimes we're just honored to get to be on it and to follow him and hopefully make a difference for his kingdom.
Absolutely. Well, Bruce, as we wrap up our time here, is there anything else that you want to say?
I just want to encourage. My biggest downfall in the past with churches that I've pastored was I got so focused on how many people were there, how many people were coming to Christ, how big the offering was. Like I grew up with a father who was a financial manager for one of the biggest companies in the state of Florida at the time.
Wow.
And it was all about performance. I played Little League. If I was up to bat 4 times and got 3 hits in the car on the way home, my dad told me about the pitch I shouldn't have swung at that 4th time. I never heard about the first 3. And so in business and when I was bivocational, I was always performance oriented. And man, that just about killed me. And it did ruin me from the church that I served at the longest. I just got ahead of God and made bad financial mistakes and management mistakes. And so it's been a challenge for me this year to say, I don't know if anybody's going to show up or not, but God's calling us to do this. He's calling us. We just have to do it. And I'm not complaining when there's 33, although I'm a lot happier when there's 74. But I just realized that whoever's coming, whoever God sends, they're there because he's brought them there and they've got needs and we can minister to them. And I think for everybody, especially through COVID, so many of my pastor friends of established churches have seen their finances take a huge hit and their attendance take a huge hit. And they've got lots of historical tracking to go on. And none of that can be allowed to impact our faithfulness to Christ, because that's what we're called to do. And it's easy to say that when you don't have anybody coming to church. Well, I'm just being faithful, but it's the truth. It's the truth. We just have to be faithful, each of us, to do what God calls us to do it to the best of our ability, do it to honor him, and leave the results up to him. And so that's what I've been struggling with personally, because I really do still deal with those challenges of wanting to see success in those tangible ways. But man, the spiritual stuff that I'm seeing means so much more. And I'm so
Yeah.
thankful for that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that. I know that's going to resonate with a lot of church planters. Planters certainly resonates with this one. That was my struggle. My last church plant, man. It's just like I was a victim of my own high expectations,
Mm-hmm.
really, and just burned myself out trying to reach my own expectations. Nobody else's, and certainly not God's, but my own.
Yes.
And
It's a killer.
so, I want to ask a follow-up question as we wrap this up. But so you look ahead and just think about, not just the Fresh Start Church, but maybe, do you have any thoughts about what the church in America maybe might look like in the near future as a result of everything we've been through in this past year with COVID and racial tensions and politics? I know it's a really big question, but do you have any thoughts on just where the church is headed, or what the church needs to do or be about?
I've got dear friends who believe that the organized church and Sunday focused, worship service is never going to be like it was. Certainly statistics tell us there's still lots of people that were attending faithfully pre-COVID who aren't attending still and aren't watching online anymore. And maybe some of those people are just going to drop away. But honestly, I think we just keep on doing what we have done in the past that's worked. I think if we start trying to react to every single thing, and trust me, when I was in pro-life ministry, I did hundreds of interviews. I was on the Today Show and Fox and Friends. I literally was on interviews, radio, TV, newspaper, all the time. And I was used to reacting, because if there was any kind of national news story, all the, NBC, ABC, CBS out of Orlando would all want to come over and get an interview with me for that night's news. And so I'm used to reacting to whatever it is. And I think in many ways we've overreacted. And I think if we can just get back to basics, I'm a huge Chicago Cubs fan. I was a Cubs fan before it was cool, and way before they won the World Series after 108 years. But there's been so many times when they'll have a manager say, we've just got to get back to basics. These guys are messing up the basic stuff that you have to do. And so I think if we are faithful to preach the love and grace of God and invite people into a relationship with Jesus, if we're faithful to make disciples and build people up so that they can make disciples, if we're faithful to love on people and help meet their needs and treat them as part of a family, it sure doesn't go out of style. And I think it may even become more rare, because people are ruder than ever. I thanked two ladies at Publix grocery store that were making subs. They both had been there 21 years. And I was there 2 days ago, and I said, well, you two ladies, what you're doing here now, and the flexibility with what I needed to order. I said, that's why people say Publix, where shopping is a pleasure. I said, that's one of the few companies with a slogan that's real. They just melted when I said that. And one of them, older lady, said, thank you. She said, it's been the hardest year of 21 years, and no one is nice to us.
Wow.
And so I just think we have the opportunity, maybe better than ever, to be nice to people, to love them, to shine the light of Christ into them, and not bring our frustrations from anti-mask vaccines, just leave all that behind and just continue to bring the gospel into a world that's probably darker than it's ever been. And to me, that's just a bigger opportunity. When I heard we're in the top 10 for unchurched and dechurched, I didn't get depressed. I thought, wow, there's a lot of fish. It's going to be easier to fish now, because there's lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the future. I'm not discouraged by it. I'm not depressed by it. It may not feel the same or look the same, but I don't think the basics change of just bringing the gospel into this world.
Yeah, I agree, Bruce. So your advice, in other words, is for the church just to keep being the church as it's supposed to be.
Yes, there's a verse from Hosea, and I don't use the Message translation or the Message paraphrase, except when I'm preaching on marriage, and I use this verse, and it's God talking about his rebellious people. That verse that talks about God and rebellious people.
Yes, that one.
Yeah, that one. And he says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start all over again, back to the days when we were courting. And I'm going to bring her bouquets of roses. I just love the imagery that the Message paraphrase gives there, because I think it's so true for marriages when things get stale, or there's been, an affair, or there's been some issue. Go back and do what you did at the beginning. When people at the beginning, they're on fire, they're excited, they just want to do everything they can for the other person. I think it's the same for the church. Go back and do what you did. Go back and do what called you into ministry, what called your church to get started. That mission probably hasn't changed. And it may look a little different, but don't get caught up or distracted by how it looks. Just do it. Just keep on. Keep on doing the things you did before that God was blessing, and the things that were working.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that, Bruce. So much wisdom in that from someone like yourself who has been through a lot of things and has sacrificed a lot and seen a lot of changes. And I know that's encouraging to me to hear. So Bruce, I know that we're gonna wrap up here, and I know, if people want to reach out to you, and more people want to be generous towards you, I don't know, or just want to touch base with you. Is there a way that people can find you, get a hold of you?
Sure. I'm on Facebook. I've got 62 friends left out of Facebook's 5,000, but I'll dump some people.
You too. You can be one of the final 62.
I'll dump some people. It's Bruce Cadle, Cadle. I'm probably the only one on Facebook. Or my email is pastorbruce@thefreshstartchurch.com. The only reason we use the Fresh Start Church, we actually never say it, but every variation of Fresh Start Church was taken for domain names and social media stuff. So, and corporate.
I like it. It's like the Ohio State, it's the Freshwater Church.
So yeah, if I can be of any help, I've been so blessed by so many people that have helped and continue to help me, that in this journey, especially, so many of my pastor friends that were just there to say, man, we're with you. What do you need? What can we do for you? How can we help? So I'm happy to encourage anybody that needs encouragement.
All right. Well, great. Well, I would encourage anyone who's listening to this to reach out to Bruce, and just even to say, hey, and I think it's a phenomenal story of what God will do to anyone who is just willing to say, here I am, I'll go, maybe reluctantly, but I'll go. And God will do amazing things. So thank you, Bruce, for sharing your story with us today. Really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been my honor. So I appreciate you and all that you do for us and for the kingdom. Your ministry is hugely needed. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's my pleasure. I get to be a part of stories like this, so it's amazing. Thank you.